Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So today we have another great show for you. Today we're going over destabilized families, and the reason why is because people are the most important thing in life, and the basic building block of any society, of any community, is the family. So today I have Miss Carroll Golden. She has 20 years, over 20 years of experience in financial services, and now serves as the executive director of NAFA Center for Excellence. And she has written two books on how not to pull your family apart. And today we're going to be going over the importance of caregiving and financial planning for caring for an aging parent. So, without further ado, Carol, tell me what's new in your world.
Well, first, thank you for having me, Jonathan. It's my pleasure. And fortunately for me, I enjoy very much what I do. I started out with New England Financial, that had a very good training course. And so I started into the profession handling investments and what have you. When one of my better clients, the plan blew up. And I was so surprised. The cause was that his wife, lovely woman, only 53, had a stroke. And everything that we had set up suddenly had to change because she wasn't going to pass away. She was going to need help for a very long period of time. That kind of started me off getting interested in how we do and don't prepare for aging. We have a society that truly values youth. But the fact is, some 72 million boomers, um, well, 10,000 are turning 65 every day. So the whole question of what is the role of the family in preparing for caregiving started to become very important. Now, in my own family, we were able to discuss, get the right documents in place, and really work out funding, product, or otherwise for our needs. But then in my second marriage, I ran into a very different situation. Um, my husband had only one brother, but he was executor. So as his mother aged, they had lost their dad to Alzheimer's. That's a whole nother topic. But as she aged, she only stopped playing golf at the age of 84. So she was a fit woman. But I had said to them, we really need to know what she wants. And as you retire and as you move on in life, Jonathan, as you and I were talking, you retire from a job, you may retire from a neighborhood and move away, but you never retire from your family and from the stability that you get from your family, no matter how you define family. And there's lots of different definitions for that. But the fact is, I agree with you. Destabilizing or stabilizing a family is probably basic to who we are and to what we're able to do. So, in talking with a lot of people, because as you said, I'm very involved in financial advice and in insurances and in just being a person who has seen one family that pulled together and one family that pulled apart. To this day, the brothers don't talk. I lost contact with all my nieces and nephews on that side of the family. It was a difficult lesson. And when I started to ask people why they don't talk about caregiving, aging, preparing for later stages in life, they all said, well, it's kind of a taboo topic, Carol. And that led them to saying, but if we had a way to kind of bring it up when it wasn't close to home, in other words, just us. So along comes my idea that I would write a story and give people the opportunity to step into the shoes of the characters. And so, as you said, Jonathan, that led to How Not to Pull Your Family Apart, a practical guide to caregiving and financial stability, because both are important. The fact is, as I mentioned, I lost contact with my nieces and my nephews. The whole idea is that this is never done in isolation. In the book, the main character and her husband have an extremely good friend, a lifelong friend. They find that they have to help him figure out something that's going to work for his father in law. So the more you think about families and extended families, the more you realize that you do need to be talking about it, taboo topic or not. So I wrote the book, and a very good friend of mine said, "You're a super organized person, Carol. Not all of us are as organized as you are, almost to a fault, by the way." So I said, "Well, what are you suggesting here?" They said, "Put a few steps in. Now, whether we follow the steps exactly or whether we only do one step or two steps, if it gives us a way to sit down with sisters and brothers and maybe our children and say, you know, I read this book and I want you to read it. Who do you think you are in here? Are we in here?" And it's a happy book. They do find solutions for every single person in the family, and that's 4 generations. So none of us are immune to needing to plan. None of us innately know, well, how do I say to my parents, what's your plan? It sounds like you want to kill them off or that you are not a loving, wonderful child. And that's not the case. It's the opposite. You're worried. How are they going to manage? What documents do they have or don't they have? Because personally, a very good friend of mine, Suzanne, was faced recently with her dad, serious illness. And she said to her sister, do we have a power of attorney in case we need it? Do we know what dad wants? I mean, I don't want to make a decision that will haunt me my whole life. I don't want to make a decision that later he says, I didn't want that or whatever. So listening, to my friend Suzanne, I thought to myself, in the care guide, the first part of the book, I put those documents and things in there. It's a huge list in the book. Why? Because some families find that they can talk about a document more easily than they can talk about health issues or more easily than they can talk about financial issues. So in the book, I also had grandpa and grandma who were aging, and grandpa was rather cantankerous. He said, "Oh, I'm not doing any care guide. I mean, I've managed all these years. I'm not interested." Family is the says, we really love you. And you love me too, don't you? But of course I do, he said. She goes, well, if something happened to me, you would want to know my doctors. You would want to know all kinds of information about where and when and who. He said, well, sure, I'd take good care of you. She goes, and I'm not supposed to do that for you? Grandpa, this is a family effort. Everyone is going to do one of these, and we don't have to share it. But in an emergency, there it is. We have the information. So you can see that I took the experience, Jonathan, from working with people, with clients that had a good experience. I looked at my experience with my family. The poor experience I had with the second family came in so late. I mean, she was already, at least I got them to agree that I could take her around and she could pick what assisted living facility she wanted to go. Because as I said, most people of any age really have pretty strong feelings about what they consider being handled versus being helped. And we want to help each
Mhm.
other in a family. Of course, Jody, like most caregivers, she hasn't got a clue that this is wrecking her life. And it is wrecking her life. You know, you start out with just a phone call. The next thing you know, you're running over to do errands. It morphs from being a casual chore to being a full time issue. And many people have had to pass up promotions, change jobs, work less. And you're a financial person, Jonathan. You and I both know that taking yourself out of a better earning situation has dire consequences because of compounding later on. And that's a situation that whether a person is working in an office, cleaning an office, um, decorating an office, all of us are in the same boat because we came from family and we need to plan to take care of that family. So I wrote the book hoping that people would, like my publisher, send it to her sister and say, I read this book. There's some ideas in here. What do you think? This way, dialogues start, discussions start. And once you start talking about it, there's tons of ideas in there. And you go to an advisor and you say, this is our situation. I'm worried about my husband. May not even be a parent. But I don't want to get caught helping my parents, helping my husband, and I'm trying to raise children, and I'm still trying to be the breadwinner of the family. So it's going to be a conversation I hope more and more of us have.
Yes. Yes, that was awesome because you touched on a few points, right? A lot of good things. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight from what you were saying was how the in-law aspect of it, right? Is because you may have, let's say, if someone is in this situation and they may have their ducks in a row, right? But maybe you're in a family that may not have their ducks in a row. It's tricky. And it's not just like, oh, I messed up. Let me just press restart. It's this is can have dire consequences for the rest of your life, right? Like if you miss up on a promotion, right? You miss out, whatever the case may be, your kids might have resentment towards you as a parent for not doing things right. Let's say they're teenagers going through high school and mom is gone, right? And mom and dad are fighting, and grandma's falling down, and you're doing all of these chores and whatnot. It is a nightmare. And I'll just share briefly from personal experience. I've watched both of my parents lose all of their parents and going through that. And it is so I was about 7 years old when I first witnessed this on an individual level as a child. Um, and it was I didn't understand it as a child, and with my last grandparent that passed away, I was 18, and something it was very different for me as a child to see my mother, go through those emotions, right? Just of going over to take care of my grandmother, right? And how that whole thing unfolded. And it's for anyone that has not experienced it, please, 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 you want to plan for this in advance. This is nothing to take lightly. And this is where the question I want to um, point to you, Carol, is how is what's a way that us as advisors, agents, producers, licensed professionals, and you, and just other people, how can we raise awareness about this subject, right? Because if family is the most important building block in a community, in a society, and if destabilized families are the source of crime, poverty, teenage pregnancies, and the list goes on, how do we raise awareness so that people can take action? What are some actionable steps?
Well, to begin with, I think what you and I are doing, I mean, there has to be a growing interest because the book hit number one on Amazon from people choosing to read it. So that's one thing. So we publish, we write. Two, what you're doing now, you're trying to get people thinking. In your day to day life, this may not come up until it's a crisis, and then it's hard to deal with. So I think that that's helpful. Then NAFA has a site called financialsecurity.org, which is a consumer site, and where we publish more and more information. Then there's an organization, Engage Women, that is in DC and are talking to senators, talking to our congressmen about how do we keep families together. I mean, some families, they have to work, some of them have to work two jobs. And as you said, then the children are left on their own. How can we provide paid family leave so that if they do have to leave a job, whatever level job, and I mean whatever level job, they would have income so that they can manage the juggling act. So one, we have to support organizations that are helping with awareness. Two, I think what you're doing here and trying to say to people, if you start the conversation, I'm here to help you, whatever direction you need to go in. I
Okay,
can't.
nice. Nice, nice. So, ladies and gentlemen, just to kind of recap what we went over today, the topic was destabilized families, and the idea behind it is how not to pull your family apart. So, the book that Carol is referencing is actually this book right here, and it's a practical guide. I've been reading through this book, and it covers everything from cover to cover, right? But for you today listening, the idea is that you need other people in life. You can't do things alone. And family, however you define family, it could be blood relatives, it could be the people in your neighborhood, your alumni group, people that you socialize, spend time with, love and care for, that you do so freely from the kindness of your heart, right? You don't feel obligated to do so. It's like you want to be in their presence. So it's how do you keep that unit cohesive, right? And we covered one is you have to plan financially, right? You have to make sure your documents are lined up. And more importantly, the first step is awareness. So that's our show for today, ladies and gentlemen. So if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, or you want to contact myself or Carol, her contact information will be in the comment and description section below. But that's our show for today. And so, Carol, do you have any last words for us?
Yes. One, I'd like to thank you again. To anyone who wants to reach out to me, can reach me at www.thecaringconversation.com, and I will respond. And contact Jonathan. He certainly has his heart in the right place.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is our show. Thank you so much. We will see you all next week. Take care and have a good one.